And welcome back to class, everybody. Our fall break is over. I hope you had a great, enjoyable time. I hope your Thanksgiving was good. Mine was. But we're ready to jump back into class. This class is quickly winding down. We're on our fourth and final writing project. Everyone that is still participating in the class has turned in a draft. And over the Thanksgiving break, I read all of those, made comments to each of you, and sent them back to you. So if you have any questions about the comments that I made or you'd like to discuss your draft, please contact me. I welcome talking with students anytime. In this week's session, we are going to continue to finalize writing project 4, make it as good as possible. As I've mentioned before, this writing project is worth the most amount of points in the class, so we really want to get this one right. So let's jump into class session 14 and see what we have to do today. I think there's a couple of chapters to read. There's one additional quiz, and I think we'll be working on one more discussion board as well. During the course of this semester, I've always tried to keep these video lectures as short as possible because I know your time is valuable. Many times after I'm finished, I think of things I could have discussed but didn't. So I hope you find these useful. So here's our session 14 folder. Let's see what's inside and what we have to do. And correct, there are two chapters to look at. Chapter 14, presenting a proposal. Chapter 26, you're going to want to pay the most attention to this one because it is the basis of the quiz. I'm not saying chapter 14 is unimportant, but you'll want to pay particular attention to chapter 26. And there are 3 supplemental resources: a practice grammar activity, links to Purdue OWL if you have questions about how you'd format your paper, and this one, principles of peer response. Well, we've seen this one before. So of these 3, again, if you don't think you need to look at them, don't. Use your own judgment. But I recommend you take the practice grammar activity and then jump directly into the quiz down below. You'll do great. Before the fall break started, we began session 13 discussion on evidence and support. Everyone that is still participating in the class posted their original thread, and in this session we will be adding 2 responses to 2 other students. And last, we will also be conducting peer response on writing project 4. And speaking of writing project 4, if there is one criticism that I have of some, but not all of the drafts, is that there simply is not enough evidence in the draft. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be fixed, but remember, this final version is supposed to be very heavy with quotes from other sources, quotes that back up the point that you're trying to make. So while it's okay to have personal opinion in your essay, after all, you are arguing a position, there should be as many quotes from other people that agree with your stance as there is your personal opinion. So make sure as you continue to fine-tune that final version, use a lot of sources. That was the purpose of writing the outline and doing the annotated bibliography from a couple of weeks ago. And that was an exercise in finding the sources that you know are going to buttress your point. So use them liberally. You don't always have to quote things exactly. You can paraphrase, that's fine, but just make sure if you're using a paraphrase that you're telling me where you got that information. So let's go into learning activities and see what lies there. There's the textbook, of course, with the 2 chapters that you have to read. Here is the practice grammar activity on semicolons and apostrophes. Those are often common mistakes. So do that first, then jump directly into the quiz. You'll do great. Purdue OWL, I don't know that we've talked enough about Purdue OWL in this class, but as I've mentioned before, Purdue OWL is absolutely the authority on matters of academic writing. So if you ever have a question about how to cite something or how you should list your citations on your works cited page, this is the place to look. It has a search feature. You can type in, how do I cite a podcast? And it will give you an example and tell you how it should be formatted. But don't forget, you can also use Citation Machine and other websites to help you with your works cited page. I'm not going to open up the PowerPoint on principles of peer response. We've seen that one before. Instead, I want to go back and go to the requirements, the assignments and assessments, I should say, for this session. And there's tutor.com. It's still not too late to send your paper to tutor.com and ask them to help you fine-tune it. Here's the discussion board for session 13 and session 14. Again, session 13 is already complete, and in session 14, you're going to post 2 responses to 2 other students about their initial post. And in doing that, you will try to answer some of these questions. You don't have to address all of them. As it says up here, answer 1 or more of the following questions. Well, how many is more? Well, it's at least 2. It could be as many as 3 or 4, but it doesn't have to be all of them. And you'll want to address this. Is the evidence credible? You could also say, is there sufficient evidence in what this person has written? If you see it's lacking, go ahead and comment on that. I know I did when I sent my reviews back, but if you think I missed something, go ahead and chime in. Is the evidence appropriate for the argument? That's an obvious one. Was the evidence applied correctly? Is the evidence interpreted in a reasonable way? Is important evidence missing? Again, that goes back to what I said just a few moments ago about insufficient evidence. And then last, does the paragraph make a convincing appeal? So you're going to want to write to 2 students at least 100 words for 200 words total. Here's the grammar exercise. Again, take this right after you take the practice one. And writing project 4, peer response. You can open the instructions and simply follow them. I'm not going to do that now because at this point in the semester, I think we're all pretty familiar with this. That's it for session 14, but let's jump ahead for just a moment and look at what we'll be doing for session 15. Because as I mentioned, the end of the class is quickly approaching. Session 16, that's our final week, is simply wrap up, reflection, talk about what you liked in the class, what worked for you, what didn't. And I think we all know ourselves as well as can be by now. If you have something that you think absolutely didn't work for you in this class, go ahead and tell me. I'll be doing this class again next semester, and your feedback is important. But let's look at session 15. Of course, you'll be turning in your final draft. And one other thing I'll mention, the final essay should be longer than your first draft. I don't have the word count in front of me. I believe it's 1,500 words. If I'm not correct, shame on me. But make sure as you're working on your final draft that you've got the right number of words in the essay. I don't want to see you add words simply to be adding words just to bump up the number. Let's try and add content too. So in session 15, beginning next week, you'll be turning in your final version, beginning the final discussion board, 15 and 16, on reflecting on your writing process. There's your final draft. No surprise here, you'll be turning it into 2 different places, one to turnitin.com and one to me. And for assignments and assessments for next week, there's the reflection and turning in the final version. So the end of class is absolutely drawing to a close. It's been a lot of fun working with all of you. Although this isn't my final screencast, you will be getting one more. I just want to say that I've really enjoyed this class, and most importantly, I've enjoyed seeing how each of you has progressed as an academic writer from the beginning of class now to the end. As always, text me, 812-498-4200. You can email me, msteenger, and the number 1 at ivytech.edu. You're welcome to call me at any time at 800-416-1747. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you around.